Hello and welcome to another Gadabout United video on the series My Season as a United Fan, and if you didn't already know, my name's Adam. As you might remember from the first episode of this series, we took a trip back to the 84-85 campaign, to my first season as a Red, and one that ended in FA Cup glory. There's a link in the description if you want to see that one, or if you can wait till the end of this video, a pop-up will appear for you to click on. This time around it's going to be a lot harder to look back, as it's a season that whilst we picked up silverware, didn't end particularly well, and even 29 years later still pisses me off, as we're moving 6 years on from 1985 to the summer of 1991 and the beginning of the 91-92 season. However, before I start in earnest, please don't forget to give me a like with a thumbs up, share and subscribe. I know that it sounds like a football ache, but I know it's just a few clicks for you and it helps the channel grow and reach far more Reds. Just to give you a bit of footballing background from the day, the 91-92 season was going to be the last one of the old Football League structure, as the 22 top-flight clubs at the season's end were destined to be in the new Football Premier League, which was essentially the same thing, but there'd be far more glamour and money flowing. Incidentally, the rules back then were a bit different too. There was no back pass rule, level was onside, it was that simple. There was no goal line technology, FA Cup replays now this season went into extra time and penalties, sides were still only allowed 2 subs, and there was no limiting transfer windows. United-wise, the club hadn't gotten their hands on the famous League Championship trophy since 1967, and if this wasn't achieved by the season's end, it'd be a quarter of a century. Alex Ferguson was the 6th different United manager since Matt Busby first retired in 1969 to try and regain it. Talking about Fergie and the 91-92 side, the club had won major trophies in successive seasons for the first time since the late 60s, as Fergie had followed on from his FA Cup win in 1990 to then take the UEFA Cup Winners' Cup in the following season and share the Charity Shield. The squad was growing in confidence and their 6th place finish in the preceding campaign was their best since the 87-88 season. United would be defending their Cup Winners' Cup title this season along with the usual 3 domestic trophies. There'd also been a few changes on this front since my last video from the 84-85 campaign. Barclays Bank were now the sponsors of the First Division, so it was known as Barclays League Division 1. And the sponsorship of the League Cup was now undertaken by Rumbelows, meaning it was now called the Rumbelows Cup. Trying to build a side to challenge for the championship, Fergie added to his squad. I was excited to see Paul Parker join from QPR for 1.7 million, an England international and excellent centre-back who could also play right-back. He was joined by an unknown Danish keeper for 625 grand from Danish club Brøndby. That was Peter Schmeichel, and I really didn't know what we'd expect. All I did know is that the current number 1, Les Sealey, was a great character who did his best, but it wasn't always quite enough. He left in the summer to Villa. Joining Les on the way out of Old Trafford was a great United servant, Mick Duxbury to Blackburn, as well as Colin Gibson to Leicester, Viv Anderson to Wednesday, Ralph Milne to Bury, and Mark Bosnich on a free as he couldn't get a work permit. The hapless Jim Leighton would eventually leave in February to Dundee. However, the biggest departure, which would have the most impact, was that of Fergie's number 2 Archie Knox, who took up the reins at Ibrox. Brian Kidd came in and eventually would be a massive positive impact on Fergie's reign, but at that point in the summer of 91, it was a devastating blow to the boss, as Knox had been at the centre of United's recent success and was a great sounding board for him. On a personal note, this was the first season I would start going to United matches, and that started with Sir Matt Busby's testimonial on the 11th of August 1991 against the Republic of Ireland. It was an amazing experience to go onto the Stretford paddock terraces for the first time, see the Old Trafford surface and take in the enormity and history of the stadium. So United's season would kick off on the 17th of August at home to newly promoted Notts County, with 5 fixtures crammed into the month. A capacity crowd saw Mark Hughes poach the first goal of the season from close range, and Brian Robson, in his 11th season at the club, finished the day scoring with a terrific volley from the edge of the area. A Steve Bruce penalty did for Villa in the second game, after Robbo was pulled back charging towards the Holt end. A turgid 0-0 at Everton was followed by an almost equally uneventful midweek local derby against Oldham Athletic at Old Trafford. 42,000 fans had to wait till the 85th minute for a Brian McClare header to take all 3 points and send the boys to the top of the table just ahead of Liverpool. The final match of the month against Leeds at home was far more crucial than any of us could ever have realised at that point in the season. A big Peter Schmeichel error coming for a cross and not making it left an open goal for Lee Chapman to finish, but a bit of a scrappy Robson equaliser, again 5 minutes from the end, saved the point. That slip-up saw United down to second spot by the end of the month, with Palace top by a point and ahead of the usual suspects in the chasing pack. We were blessed in September with a generally winnable run of fixtures, although Wimbledon, which began the month, and a visit to White Hart Lane at the end of it were always going to be tricky. This would also be the month that United would start its Rumbelows Cup and Cup Winners' Cup campaigns. The Dons were a tough proposition, but the boys got an excellent 2-1 result in South London. The next game against Norwich was an 8-minute Old Trafford assault as Dennis Irwin, Brian McClare and most notably Ryan Giggs all scored between the 20th and 28th minutes. Giggs' goal was particularly sweet as he precociously finished from a tight angle after intercepting a Norwich back pass. A 1-0 win at the Dell, usually another frustrating fixture for us in recent seasons, was followed by an expected steamrolling of Luton at home, 5-0. We were untouchable that day. The game in North London was the most challenging of the month, but a terrific opener by Sparky after 18-year-old Ryan Giggs' pass had unlocked the defence, put the Red Devils into the lead. The contentious equaliser from Spurs set up a frantic finale, but an 86th minute pinpoint header by that man Brian Robson again at 34 years of age showed what a talent we had at both sides of the age spectrum. A perfect September saw the boys go top by 5 points over Liverpool, with Leeds and Palace close behind. The table was already taking some shape and the media and fan expectation of United's title chances this season were building. On paper, United seemed to have a kind Cup Winners' Cup draw, having a tie against Greek side Atheniakos of Athens. The away leg ended up 0-0, setting up what still appeared to be a straightforward return fixture at Old Trafford in October. The Rumbelows Cup started with a good draw against 2nd Division Cambridge, and I was one of the almost 31,000 spectators to witness a comfortable 3-0 win in the first leg at Old Trafford. The tie all but done, a 1-1 draw at Cambridge in October, set up another good tie against 2nd Division Portsmouth in the 4th round. October was going to be a very different month with results than September, as we hosted Liverpool and Arsenal, who had won the previous 3 league titles between them, but also with newly promoted Sheffield Wednesday. A generally dour goalless confrontation with Liverpool will mainly be remembered for Mark Hughes' clash with the Scousers David Burrows and an apparent headbutt, which not only saw us reduced to 10 men, but lose the Welsh marksman for the next 3 matches for violent conduct. However, it was the game against champions Arsenal that was seen by many to be the real test, and after the late David Rocastle's brilliant effort went in off an unlucky Schmeichel, a less auspicious goal off the backhand or shoulders of Bruce left both sides with honours even. After dropping 4 points in 2 games, United were looking to go to Wednesday and win to maintain their lead at the top of the Barclays First Division. The boys missed a clutch of good chances early on, and it was Wednesday who took the lead. However, Chockey's 2 goals in 5 minutes midway through that first half seemed to settle the nerves, and both goals showed up the home side's awful defence. United didn't welcome the interval, and once the fatigue from midweek European excursions kicked in, were far less of a proposition the second period. The Owls came back and a Nigel Jemson brace made it 3-2 to the home side. Leeds would go to Hillsborough and hit 6 later on in the season, and this inability of United to close out these mediocre sides was already showing itself to be a problem. That dismal October period saw a 5-point lead evaporate, and now Leeds topped the table by a point. This Lancashire-Yorkshire top 2 tango would become a familiar feature from now on. The chasing pack had also caught up with the next 5 clubs, now all within 4 points of us. Back into the Cup Winners' Cup, and the return leg against Atheniakos at the beginning of October gave us more problems than it should have. Still goalless, the match headed into extra time. United finally broke the stubborn Greek resolve as Hughes and McClare struck twice within 2 minutes of each other, with only 10 minutes to go through 2-0. Unfortunately, due to no seeding in this straight knockout tournament, we were drawn against a very solid side, Atletico Madrid, with the first leg away later in the month. Unfortunately for us, the new UEFA rules on foreign players, known as the home players rule or the 3+2 rule, were really complicated, and if memory serves, we're only allowed 3 foreign players, with 2 more being considered as assimilated if they'd been at the club for 5 or more years. Unfortunately, the Scots, Welsh and Irish were counted as foreign now. In the game, Atletico's Paulo Futre took a full advantage and ran the show that night, even though we battled hard. However, it looked like for much of the game that his solitary first half strike would be the only difference. Unfortunately for us, 2 goals in the last 3 minutes essentially ended our hopes of defending the trophy. We'd need a miracle now at Old Trafford to reverse the deficit in November. Back to domestic cups, and the 3-1 League Cup third round win against 2nd Division Portsmouth didn't come easy either, as 3 second half goals sent us into round 4, and another home draw against local rivals Oldham Athletic. The matches in November and December would really show our title potential, and as the season went on we really started to believe. The boys started November with a comfortable 2-0 win against Sheffield United at Old Trafford, with Kanchelskis getting a worldie in his typical style. But that was then followed by a trip to Main Road, where we hadn't won since they got promoted 2 seasons before. This time around was no exception, and we left there with a scrappy point after a 0-0 draw. United faced West Ham next, who were precariously placed near the bottom of the league. An iconic Old Trafford goal from Giggs with his volleyed finish from a McClare cross, and Robbo capitalising on some poor Hammers defending, was enough to hold the lead for a 2-1 win. United finished off their league commitments for the month once again in South London, this time against Palace, who had started the season strongly. Turning around a 1-goal deficit, Webb, McClare and Kanchelskis all got on the score sheet for a 3-1 win. As you can see from the table, Leeds matched that October consistency to remain a point clear at the top, but the chasing pack had fallen back. Even then it was already starting to look like a 2-horse race. Back into Europe, and a desperate challenge faced us at home to Atletico, as I joined 39,653 others to see if we could overturn that 3-goal deficit. The atmosphere was electric, and that was intensified as Sparky scored after just 2 minutes. However, we didn't capitalise on this amazing start, and German veteran Bernd Schuster scored with about 20 minutes to go to kill the tie. The game ended 1-1 and dumped us out 4-1 on aggregate. However, in November we had some other European silverware to play for, as we were up against European champions and the superbly skillful Red Star Belgrade in the UEFA Super Cup. The game was usually played over 2 legs, but the start of the Yugoslav Civil War would put paid to the away leg in Belgrade, handing us the advantage. Red Star were amazing that night, and my enduring memory is Savicevic leaving Bruce for dead. His skill and pace were mesmeric. Bruce missed a first-half penalty after Red Star handballed, but Brian McClare got the winner, following up after Webb hit the post. A half-empty Old Trafford was far less than that Red Star team deserved, but I was fortunate to be one of those who witnessed a piece of silverware won outright for the 3rd season in a row. December was going to be an eventful month in our league campaign, with a game against Leeds at Ellen Road, a summit clash as the last fixture of 1991. United started the month with an Old Trafford trouncing of Coventry 4-0, and a cracking goal from Neil Webb with a lob over Brozovic. Even more impressively was the big match live game at Stamford Bridge, which has never been a particularly easy place for us to go. Having lost both home and away the year before, we really need to show our mettle and intentions to Leeds, who would just leapfrogged us after that Coventry game. A Dennis Irwin 30-yard free kick, a close range finish from McClare and a Bruce penalty all contributed to a fine 3-1 win. The Boxing Day encounter at Boundary Park Oldham was an epic one, and it ended up remarkably 6-3. Irwin and McClare both got a brace, with the untamable Andrei Kanchelskis, with his speed and unorthodox style, adding another, and Giggs finished off the scoring. That allowed us to take a 1-point lead to Ellen Road for the top of the table clash. After getting through the 3rd round of the League Cup 2-0 versus Oldham earlier in the month, we'd been drawn away against Leeds in the quarter-finals of the competition and the FA Cup 3rd round, so we had 3 Roses clashes in the space of 17 days over the New Year period. Expectations from both sides were massive, and the United Leeds hatred was truly reignited. The match at Ellen Road lived up to all the hype as we took the lead again through Neil Webb and his measured strike from the edge of the box a minute after half-time. We seemed to be containing them, but a clumsy challenge on McAllister by Pallister allowed Mel Sterling to convert a penalty with 10 minutes to go. We left Yorkshire with a point which was at the very least credible, if not a tad disappointing. Taking a lead into the new year, everything looked well set up for a down-to-the-wire championship race. Both sides were well matched, and there would be a lot of twists and turns until the title was decided. New Year's Day against struggling QPR seemed a great way to start 1992, but we were sluggish and lacklustre. 2 goals for Rangers in the first 5 minutes left us shell-shocked, and we struggled to get to half-time as we were outmatched and outplayed. A further goal just before the hour made it an incomprehensible 3-0 before Brian McClare pulled one back with only 7 minutes left. QPR's Dennis Bailey finished his hat-trick 3 minutes later, and we were fortunate to only lose 4-1. It was an ominous blip. Something seemed to start to happen to our confidence. Perhaps it was the weight of expectation, but it got to the crowd too, and Old Trafford became a very tense place to play, which was then reflected in the side's performances as we averaged a goal every league game for the rest of the campaign. We got rid of our New Year QPR hangover with a 1-0 win over Everton at home, but that was followed by an awfully nervy 1-1 draw at bottom place Notts County. The creativity seemed to have gone, and after that disastrous start to the year, our opponents could see that we were vulnerable for the first time that season. Leeds were to beat County 3-0 in the following week at Ellen Road, just for comparison. Another tight win against Villa with a sparky goal was enough to get the double over the Claret and Blues and keep us top by a meagre 2 points at that stage. The second instalment of the 3-match series against Leeds was in the Rumbelows Cup, and the game more than lived up to the billing. It had everything. The late Gary Speed gave the home side the lead after 17 minutes, but a brilliant Clayton Blackmore free kick from 30 yards and levelled the scores. 1-1 at half-time, that man Kanchelskis again put us back into the lead not long after the break, with the ever-maturing Ryan Giggs finishing off the scoring in the last 5 minutes for a fantastic 3-1 win, a psychological edge and progression to a two-legged semi-final against Middlesbrough. The final match of the series, the FA Cup game a week later, was nothing like the first two matches. Leeds dominated for huge swathes of the game, but a sparky header just before half-time and against run of play did for the Yorkshire side. The Red Devils may have won the battles overall, recording 2 wins and a draw in these unofficial series of matches, but our cup progression meant a more complicated fixture list later in the season, which could come back to haunt us, where Leeds could now keep their players fresh and focus on the league with their new acquisition on loan from Nîmes, Eric Cantona. This scenario was quickly brought to the fore as an unkind draw saw us play Southampton away in the 4th round of the FA Cup. A 0-0 scoreline in late January would mean a replay and an extra game at Old Trafford in early February. February was going to be another packed month with 5 league matches as well as other domestic cup commitments. The first 2 matches against Arsenal and Sheffield Wednesday were against the 2 form teams in the division at the time. At Highbury, United took the lead through a McClare goal, but David Rocastle did us again as the Gunners hit us on the break. So only a point from that game, which meant we lost top spot and goal difference back to Leeds. A much improved Sheffield Wednesday scored first again from David Hurst after just 4 minutes, but despite McClare's equaliser just 8 minutes later, we couldn't find it within ourselves for a winner and only took a point from the game. A sparky brace in a 2-0 win over Palace in the next match at Old Trafford was followed by a visit from Chelsea, who'd beaten handsomely in December. I unfortunately took in this midweek match and it was a stinker. Lacking imagination, mediocre Mal Donaghy's 63rd minute own goal for his future employers looked like it might be enough, but a terrific sparky strike at the Stretford end saw the crowd erupt, and even with less than 5 minutes left we felt that we could win it. We didn't, and that match was followed by another disappointing draw at Highfield Road. We weren't even able to break down a relegated dogfight participant like Coventry anymore. Unlike Leeds, Fergie didn't add to the United attack. The pressure and the finger pointing would be on Hughes for the next few months, as that desperate last gasp equaliser against Chelsea would be his last until the final game of the season. United held a slender lead in the table as Leeds were regularly dropping points too, including a 2-0 defeat at relegation-threatened Oldham. Both sides were feeling the heat as the rest of the challenging packs started to close the gap. The disjointed fixture pile-up, games in hand and a point or two's difference here or there would be the margin between the clubs until late April. The FA Cup replay against Southampton earlier in the month was an unwelcome emotional rollercoaster for the fans and the players alike. The Saints were 2-0 up by the 21st minute through Gray and Shearer, but Andrei Kanchelskis pulled one back just before the break, and Brian McClare's last-minute equaliser made it 2-2 and took us into extra time. In the extra period, Brian Robson's header seemed to have won it, but the ball was deemed not to have crossed over the line. Check the photo and see what you think. The problem was we weren't blessed with goal line technology back in 1992. The game, for the first time in FA Cup history, went to penalties. Misses by Neil Webb and decisively by Ryan Giggs sent the visitors through. Moving into March, and the run of games once again didn't look so difficult on paper, with only Forest, one of the best sides in the First Division at the time, the only one that would challenge us. After going behind at Bramall Lane, it was Brian McClare, who would be United's top scorer that season, who hit the back of the net, and a late winner from Blackmore grabbed all 3 points against Sheffield United. As predicted, Forest was the place where we recorded our 3rd defeat of the season, as Nigel Clough scored a very soft goal through the flailing grasp of Peter Schmeichel. What's worse, United missed arguably better chances. Optimistically, before this defeat, you could say that the run we had was a solid one, unbeaten for 9 games since QPR. But if you look at the unbeaten run of 8 matches before that New Year's Day defeat, we took 20 points from a possible 24 available. Since then, we'd just taken 17 from 27, hardly title-winning form. 3 days after that seismic Forest defeat, we faced Wimbledon at Old Trafford, who had beaten earlier in the season. A physical, dogged and stubborn Wimbledon led to another 0-0 draw, but it could have been much worse as Terry Phelan broke through to have a one-on-one with Schmeichel, but not for the first time the Great Dane pulled off a miraculous save. He'd go on to get a record 17 clean sheets in that campaign. And the 3rd match in a row without scoring was against QPR away, which saw us take another inadequate draw. However, for the last game of the month, we did manage to put in a strong performance at Norwich, one of our bogey clubs at the time. 2 crackers from Ince, along with McClare, broke our goal drought as we ran out 3-1 winners and returned to the top of the league after Leeds had experienced a poor run of their own, earning 20 points from 36, had lost to Oldham and QPR and had drawn 5 others. One bright spark in March was the League Cup semi-final tie against Middlesbrough, which came before the league matches at the beginning of the month. After unsurprisingly another 0-0 draw at Ayresome Park, the return match in front of an Old Trafford crowd of almost 46,000 supporters was a tremendous turnout. The hugely missed Lee Sharp, returning from injury for his only 8th game of the season, put us ahead on an atrocious pitch before the visitors levelled, sending us into another unwanted period of extra time. The crowd sang Alex Ferguson's Red and White Army for the whole of the extra time, only stopping to celebrate Giggs' volleyed winner at the beginning of the second period. The boys had held on to send us into the final versus Forest on the 12th of April. Moving into April, and it was clear that United were to be made victims of their own domestic cup success. Progression at the expense of Leeds in the FA and League Cups meant that whilst they played more league games in February and March, Man United would have to play catch-up with 6 league games in this period, 5 of which would come in 11 days, as well as the League Cup final against Forest to navigate. The Derby game was one where we dominated, and we took the lead with a superb goal from Giggsy, hitting an unstoppable shot from outside the area, low into the bottom right-hand corner. Plagued again by the inability to finish chances, we were made to pay. A City penalty after a clumsy Bruce tackle led to the equaliser, and the game finished 1 apiece. Leeds had just been beaten 4-0 at Main Road, but this draw was still a bitter pill to swallow. On the weekend of the 11th, 12th of April, Leeds took Chelsea apart at Ellen Road with that goal from Cantona. The Frenchman would only score 3 goals since his debut in February till the end of the season, but his influence was massive and enough to propel his side forward. Meanwhile, on the Sunday, United went to Wembley for the League Cup final against Forest, trying to banish the memories of losing the previous year's final. United had the majority of the chances in what you could say wasn't a classic cup final. McClare's 100th goal for the club after a 1-2 with Giggs was the difference, although Brian Lawes' clearance off the line should have been his second in the second half. That afternoon, Steve Bruce became the first United captain to lift the League Cup. United had to start to now hunt down Leeds after that cup success, but despite 2 games in hand, the boys were 4 points behind, and it was going to be a massive ordeal, with 4 matches in 7 days to play catch-up. We started well enough with Kanchelskis' superb volley winner against the Saints. However, 2 days later, an away trip to relegation-heading Luton saw the Ukrainian inexplicably dropped, and Lee Sharp's only league goal of the season wasn't enough, as Mick Harford got a fortunate equaliser. On the same day, Leeds drew at Anfield, so it was as you were. 48 hours later, and both clubs were playing again, but whilst Leeds secured a comfortable home win against Coventry, United's match against Forest was hardly the same story as it was at Wembley. A soft Ian Wone goal was quickly equalised by McClare, but a Forest winner 10 minutes from time essentially made the trip to Upton Park 2 days after that a must-win. Going down to the capital, United carried multiple injuries including Robson, Parker and Ince, and they faced an opponent who needed to win to stay up. Whilst Man United toiled and found the West Ham keeper Ludek McCloskey inspired and unbeatable, a massively fluky Kenny Brown goal who ran into Pallister's lazy clearance somehow found the bottom corner, which allowed his side to live for another day, but essentially put the title firmly in Leeds' hands. Leeds in this period were now fully benefiting from their 2 cup defeats incurred at the beginning of the year against the Red Devils. They could now rest players and they were fully fit for their Sunday clash in their penultimate match away at Sheffield United, whilst the boys took a trip to Anfield, the last thing they needed to avoid handing the title over to the Yorkshire club. Leeds' match came earlier in the day, and if you don't believe in luck, look at this game on YouTube. Sheffield took the lead after some shoddy Leeds defending, only for the away side to equalise in injury time in the first half to a Rod Wallace goal, which was essentially a Brian Gale defensive clearance that cannoned against Speed and Wallace. Leeds retook the lead before Sheffield United equalised again, and when a draw was looking the most likely result, which would mean a Manchester win in Liverpool would grab back control of the title race, another piece of calamitous defending by Gale, the former Man City player, saw him put through his own goal, giving Leeds a 3-2 win. On Merseyside, with confidence low and pressure high, it wasn't to be, and the home side's 2-0 win meant the title had slipped away, and for me personally, I remember being as angry and disappointed at this title failure than any other one in the following years, including 2012 and also the Champions League failures. But what's even sadder is that was the final year of the famed Stretford end, as legislation regarding all-seater stadia meant that it had to be knocked down and rebuilt. It would never be the same again. A final day win, 3-1 over Spurs at Old Trafford in front of a large crowd, also came bang in the middle of the time of excuses for the failure, complaints about the Old Trafford surface and fixture congestion, although the Football League didn't help us out with that at all. But looking back, our inability to finish sides off, getting just 15 points from 24 against the bottom 4 sides, and what's worse, 8 out of 30 against the rest of the top six did for us. The drying up of goals and not adding to the attack in late winter or the beginning of spring, as well as some questionable Fergie team lineups in the latter half of the season, were a massive factor. It wasn't all about luck, although we had little of that too. Despite everything in this season, United still won 2 trophies, both PFA awards, the senior one going to Gary Pallister and the young player going to Ryan Giggs. And we went into the 1992-93 campaign, the first as the Premier League, with renewed determination and hopefully learning from the lessons of this campaign. Finally, United had won the FA Youth Cup in '92, captained by Ryan Giggs. I wonder what happened to them. So what were your memories of that season? Please let me know in the comments below, as well as like, share and subscribe of course. Thank you as always for your support.